listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
Hello there, students, and welcome to today's tutorial where we're going to look at some recent cue cards and part 3 questions from the IELTS speaking exam. These are new for January 2024. We're going to give you some sample answers and also a bit of background on how you can prepare for these. Now, it's interesting that we're doing the speaking ones because I'll probably incorporate some of these recent speaking cue cards and part 3 questions in the speaking app that we are developing at the moment, whereby you can practice all day for free with the chatbot. You speak into it, you get your evaluation. That's the roadmap. At the moment, we can only chat with it, and it'll give you some conversational practice and also some part 3 practice by just giving you the questions so you can practice responding there. You can see your answer on the screen. Later we're going to incorporate some evaluation in there. That's coming very soon. So sign up to the newsletter and you'll be updated about this, or just go to IELTSPodcast.com. And if we've launched it, then you'll be able to see the pop-up probably in the corner of the screen that invites you to test it out. And if you are testing it out, please give us some feedback. There will be a tab on the side of the screen where you can give feedback, share your experience, tell us if you liked it, if you hated it. And just 2 more things. If I sound under the weather, it's because I am. After coming back to the UK in November, back to my hometown, I have just been full of flu and cold. I don't know if it's because I'm living in the UK or because my child now is just a box of diseases, as they say, and just interacting with other disease gremlins, we could say. But I am severely under the weather, and that's why I might not sound as young and handsome as I often do. All right, let's jump into it. Describe a foreigner who speaks your native... This is a cue card, sorry. Describe a foreigner who speaks your native language very well. You should say who this person is, where he or she is from, how they learnt your native language, and explain why they can speak your native language well. Excellent. Let me check the timer, and let's start now. I'd like to tell you about a friend who I met in Budapest, Hungary, and he was an Israeli friend. And I think originally he is from Israel, but he spent a lot of time outside of the country. I think he went to Australia for a long time, got his permanent residency there. And I don't know exactly how he learnt my native language, which is English, but I assume it was probably from getting an education in that language and spending time in an English speaking country, and also just interacting daily with people with that language. Now, I noticed that he spoke really well because one afternoon we were walking in the streets, and he said, "Oh yeah, I spent a year in Colombia and I learned Spanish there, so I can speak Spanish." So I switched into Spanish, and we started talking, and then afterwards I said, "Oh, your Spanish is pretty good," and he was like, "Actually, it's not that good because we've been interacting in English all this time, and you never said anything about it. Whereas when we went to Spanish, you immediately knew that it wasn't my native language." And I think that for me was very eye-opening because his language was so good that it went under the radar, so to speak. And I think he can learn it so well just because he was determined and spent so much time in a country using the language every day. And that's my talk about a friend who can speak my native language extremely well. So there we go. It's probably 5 or 6 seconds over. I added some anecdote in there. I added a little phrase. It went under the radar, a little idiomatic expression. By adding an anecdote, I could switch tenses and talk about the past tense and use the past tense. I worked through the bullet points. I said who he is, where he's from, how they learnt the language. I didn't actually know how he learnt the language. I just assumed, due to his level, that he'd spent a lot of time in Australia and probably gone through the educational system there as well. And I finished with, and that's my talk. I hope you liked it. That's just a little helper phrase to help you signal to the examiner that you've finished and we can move on. Also, I had my eye on the timer. I went 5 or 6 seconds over, but that's fine. Now, the important thing here is just to work through the bullet points. Now, I'm going to go to another cue card before we go to the Part 3 ones. And I chose this cue card because I could imagine it's one where a student would think, oh gosh, oh my goodness, how on earth am I going to answer this? So the cue card is, describe a successful business person you know, e.g. running a family business. You should say who this person is, how you know him or her, what business they do, and explain why they are successful. Now, personally, the only person who immediately springs to mind is my dad. He ran a supermarket in our village for well over 30 years, and he was extremely competent with this. However, the chances that one of your parents has a family business are pretty slim. Because, I mean, in all honesty, that's the only person who springs immediately to mind. If I give it some more thought, I could probably find a couple more candidates. But I would imagine for the vast majority of you, you might struggle with this. So what I'm going to do is just give you a little workaround. And you'll hear it now. I'll just jump straight into it. I'm going to tell you about a person I know of who's extremely successful in business. It's not a person I know personally, i.e. they're not running a family business. But this person, I still admire them and they are still extremely successful. The person I want to talk about is Elon Musk. I know him through the media. He is always gathering media attention, be it good or bad. This person has a whole range of businesses, ranging from Solar City, which is, I think, a network of solar charging car stations in the US. He's also got SpaceX, which transports satellites and people up to space. He also has Tesla, which I think is the business he's probably most known for. Now, this person is, and also in the last 2 years, he bought Twitter. So I think this person is successful because they have a relentless drive and ambition, and they are so maniacal about the implementation of the business and the business practices. I think another reason why this person is successful is because not only do they have business skills, they are extremely competent in other areas such as marketing, such as operations, and also even the technical expertise. I believe Mr. Musk is also an engineer and can code and understands some of the quite advanced topics such as rocket engineering and software and AI and all these other pockets of knowledge. So even though I don't know this person personally, I wanted to talk about him because I don't know anybody who is running a family business. And that's my talk, and I hope you like it. Okay, so what did I do there? I twisted it slightly because there could be a case where you honestly don't know somebody running a family business, but that doesn't mean you can talk about your favorite teacher at school, or you can talk about a special event in your country, a special festival. No, you've got to keep it on topic, but you do have a margin of space for maneuver. You do have some wiggle space, as we could call it, to stay on topic, to work through the bullet points, but it's just slightly different from what is expected due to your circumstances. So just keep that in mind. Okay? Again, let's have a look at another cue card. Describe a party you enjoyed. You should say when you went to this party, where this party was held, what kind of party it was, and explain why you enjoyed this party. So you could be in a situation where you can't really remember a party. So you might want to just modify it very slightly and still work through the cue card. So you could say, it wasn't technically a party, it was more of a night out with friends. Okay? And then you're still going to work through it. You're going to say, when you went to this party, well, I went out with my friends in Leeds or in Melbourne or in Cairo, or Hyderabad, wherever, where the party was held. It was held in a nightclub on Fifth Avenue, and it was amazing. The place was full of lights. There was disco balls. Everybody was happy. It was and dancing. What kind of party it was? I guess it was more of a socializing party, more of an active party, an adult party, and it was just truly enjoyable. And explain why you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because everybody was having fun. So you can see, I'm not technically talking about what you most likely expect, maybe a birthday party or a parent's anniversary party or whatever. It's a night out, but I'm still working through the bullet points and I'm still making sure it's on topic. But because no party came to mind immediately, I'm just going to repurpose this night out I had and package it as a party and work through the bullet points. That's incredibly important. If you do find yourself in that situation of repurposing a business person or repurposing a night out for the sake of the cue card or whatever, just still follow the cue cards and you will be okay. Right then, before we wrap this up, let's go through a few part 3 questions. Now in part 3, the questions are going to be more abstract. They're going to be pushing your ability. They're going to be possibly, it might seem a little bit repetitive. And if they are getting repetitive, that's a good sign. That's a good sign because the examiner is like, okay, they talked about this pretty well. Let's see if they can talk about it again, but from a different point of view. Okay? So it's really just testing your ability to talk about it in numerous different ways. You're probably around a band 7 if that's happening. Let's go. Bad service. How do most people respond to bad service? Well, I guess it depends largely on your culture and the society you are in. My Spanish friends always used to be impressed by my ability to complain, but in a nice way and with a smile. And they said that's just not done here. Most people in Spain, according to them, would just probably smile and then grumble between themselves. So I guess it's a cultural thing. In my country, it's also quite common for people just to smile on the surface and then grumble to their friends and family afterwards. So I guess it just largely depends on what society you are in and you personally. But personally, I will complain, but I'll try to do it in the most polite way possible. There we go. Do you think services are better now than in the past? Oh yes, without a shadow of a doubt. Services are unbelievably better. I remember in the past that a service and pleasant service and a happy waiter, for example, was seen as a bonus. But nowadays, especially in the city where I live, there is so much competition that companies with bad service or poor service will quickly find themselves in a tricky situation. As people complain, they might complain online, and that news travels fast. So services have definitely been improved compared to the past. So that question forces you, if you're going to answer effectively, it's going to force you to compare the past and the present and explain and reason. What kind of services are bad services? I guess, in my personal experience, the services that are poor or bad are usually the ones that don't have a lot of competition. For example, in the UK, the train services are all privatized, which I think is ridiculous because it's impossible to compete. It's very difficult to compete on a train line. No other company is going to build another train line. It's just incomprehensible and redundant. So the companies that are bad often don't suffer the consequences of competition. So that you might have an almost monopoly or a near monopoly, and these tend to lend themselves to a poor customer experience. There we go. So that's a topic that's quite close to me. I tried not to get emotionally involved, but I gave an example and I gave a reason why they might be poor. Next question. Why do some people choose to remain silent when they receive bad services? I guess this is a cultural thing, because I know in some countries, such as Germany, I think they are much more direct and they will challenge, and they don't see any problem with challenging poor service. I think this is also the case in Holland, whereas in other countries, especially in England, being polite and just making sure everybody's happy, even though it's fake, is the cultural norm. So I guess it comes down to the culture you are in and the societal norms you're expected to follow. What are the most common complaints people have about services? I guess the most common complaints might be that the problem isn't getting solved. I've experienced this personally quite a lot, where I might complain and the person is extremely polite and smiling, but the problem doesn't get solved, and it's quite difficult to push for a solution. And I guess this is because the person handling the complaint might not have the power to solve it. It might not be within their remit, and so it makes the whole experience even more painful for the person. But I guess common complaints might just come down to this, in all honesty, that the problem is not getting solved. There we go. I could talk about that far, far more. I could give an example about my parents fighting the energy company and keep sending the wrong bills, but I didn't want to go down that route. And I think it's always important just to keep the question in your mind all the time when you're answering it, so you do not go off on a tangent. One last question. Are there any industries where bad service is more common? I believe bad service is more common in industries, as I said before, that really don't have that much competition. In the UK, where I'm from, this might be the utilities or the internet service providers or the telephone companies, where there's only one or two or three players or companies, so they know that you don't have that many options, and in most cases you're usually locked in, and they know that you're locked in, that your phone number is with them, that you've got a 12-month contract, so switching from them is extremely difficult, and therefore they tend to skimp and tend to avoid investing in delivering a good service. So I would say the telephone industries, the utilities, where it's difficult to switch, are usually more renowned for poor services. There we go. So I tried to address some questions there that might not be as easy to address. A lot of these issues, you might be in a country where you don't talk about bad service, so it's difficult to start talking about it in an IELTS exam. You might be in you probably have never thought about why some companies have poor customer service. I mean, for me, I experienced it a lot, having recently moved back to the UK and starting from zero and starting afresh with the utilities, with the train companies, with the telephone companies and all of this. So fortunately for you, I've experienced a lot of bad customer service recently, so it's all fresh. But I know that once things are settled down, that you're moving on to other stuff and you've got bigger concerns. So the poor service is kind of pushed back to more important concerns in your life. So hopefully you got some more value from that, than if I were talking about admired athletes or advertisements or whatever. And that's it for today's tutorial. If you want to practice these questions, they will be loaded into our speaking chatbot. And the plan is that you hear the question, you give your answer, and then you can upgrade to get your answer evaluated. But to get value from this system, you don't even have to see the evaluation. To get value, you just need to start speaking and start getting your brain in action, in motion, and thinking about these topics. And just browsing through the list is not the same as hearing the question and trying to respond to it. So have a look for that speaking chatbot. It's going to be released very soon. And if we haven't released the IELTS module yet, you can still go to that chatbot and you can still practice your conversational English, which I know is quite valuable for a lot of students who want to improve their fluency. So that's it for today. Just remember to go to IELTSPodcast.com, sign up there for the Fast Pass newsletter. You'll get lots of advice and more tutorials about how to pass fast, how to improve your score, how to pass the exam, and reach your goal of band 7, 8 or 9. We're here. You can do this. Just keep on pushing, keep on trying, and you will get there. Have a great day and good luck with your IELTS exam.
Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com.